As I previously mentioned, when you bring a bitmap into a shading network or a material, you're not actually bringing that data into your scene file. 3ds Max doesn't store 2D pixel-based images internal to the scene file. What it does is simply store a path or a location of where those files can be found. And you need to keep all the files inside your current project, otherwise they're very likely to get lost. I'm going to illustrate what the problem is and then show you how to correct it if it occurs. Let's say my images are not in the proper place, which is Scene Assets Images. I'll go into that folder, Scene Assets Images, and here's the bitmap. It's cocktail table diffuse map.png. I'm going to move it out and just drop it onto my desktop just for the purposes of this demonstration. And now it's in the wrong place. I'll go ahead and open up 3ds Max and open the scene file for this particular exercise. And it's 1503 tracking assets.max. And it's got no map on it currently. I'll go ahead and load up the material editor with the M key. Here's the material. It is currently assigned. I'll bring in a bitmap. And as soon as I do, I get that select bitmap image file dialog. The file I want is not in the location that I need it to be. It's in some other place. And here's where things go wrong. If I navigate to some other location, I can link to that file, but that's going to cause issues later on. Let's say I go to that desktop and select that file and click Open, and it loads okay in here. We can see it, and we can assign it, and everything's fine. And then we can look at that. It's going to be on that material because I've previously enabled Show Shaded Material in Viewport there. So that's all very well and good, and it seems like there's no issue there. Okay, so I'm going to save this scene file in this state. And I'm going to call it 1503 Tracking Assets Bad Path. And by bad path, I mean it's pointing at a location that's really not optimal, and it's going to cause problems later. Let's go back into our material editor, investigate that, double-click on that bitmap node. And what you'll see here in the bitmap parameters is the bitmap path. And currently it says ... cocktail table map diffuse.png. Now that is a relative path, but it's pointing to a path that's outside of the current project. That's what the ... is. In command line, in DOS and Unix, ... means the folder above the current folder or the directory above the current folder. In this situation here, the scene will look for the bitmap outside of the project folder from now on. So that's fine. It seems okay. It's loading okay, but it's actually not fine. Okay, I'm going to now reset 3ds Max. And let's say I move that file to some other location. In this case, I'll actually move it to where it's supposed to be. I'm going to actually put it back into Scene Assets Images. And then go back to 3ds Max. And let's load that file that we just created. And it's here, 1503 Tracking Assets Bad Path. And I get a warning, missing external files. I linked to a file that was in a certain specific location, which was one level up from my current project. Then I moved that file. And the same would happen if you rename the file or if you moved the project folder. You would get this dialog, missing external files. Now down here you've got some buttons, and these are actually really kind of problematic. What everyone wants to do, what seems to be the intuitive thing to do, is to click on Browse. Please do not click on Browse. What that would do would take you to another window where you could set some permanent paths where this particular installation of 3ds Max would look for textures in the future. And that is a very, very bad workflow, very problematic, because it would look like your files were being found and everything would be fine until you went to, for example, move your project to a different folder or drive. Then the files would not get moved with it. And if you archive that project, then the necessary files would not be archived with it. I just can't stress enough how you need to keep all of your files inside the current project folder structure. Again, don't click on Browse. Just ignore this dialog and click on Continue. Now the scene loads up, but we don't see the texture. It's not showing up. But the texture actually is where we need it to be. It actually is in the proper location inside Scene Assets Images. So the process, if you have a missing texture, is to just make sure that the file is in the current project Scene Assets Images, first of all. And once it's there, you can go into a window to fix the broken link. And that's going to be in the Application menu, under References, Asset Tracking. This is a very, very important dialog. And within this dialog, you will see a list of all of the external assets. If you've got XREF files, they will be listed here. If you've got textures, they're listed here. And I've also got one here that's a substance file. That's a type of procedural texture that's external to 3ds Max. And you can see here, cocktail table diffuse map.png is not found. File missing. And the path is listed here. It's looking one level up from the current project. We can easily fix that path and point it in the right location. Select the file or files, and then right-click and choose Set Path. And you can browse to your current project Scene Assets Images. You can also just type it in here, and that's what I'm going to do. Type in Scene Assets and then / Images. And that's what you want to see in all of these fields here. You want them all to start with Scene Assets and no drive letter and no volume name. Click OK, and then boom, it says Found. Okay, we can close that, and there's our texture. And I would want to save the scene again now with the proper linked texture in the right location. I'll just call this one Tracking Assets Finished. All right, so that's how you can correct bad paths. Just place all of your textures into your current project Scene Assets Images, and then go into that asset tracking dialog and fix all the paths manually.